Good morning, Who Dat Nation. Brendan Boylan here with Bob Rose, Saints News Network pregame show. We have one of the biggest rivalries in the NFL going for yet another round. It's week 9. New Orleans Saints play host to the Atlanta Falcons. And going into this season, I think there was a lot of uncertainty on both sides. The Saints moving on after 15 years with Drew Brees, and the Falcons in what seemed like a little bit of a rebuild, and looking at their season at this point, I think that's a fair assessment of their season. Bob, New Orleans starting another quarterback, Trevor Siemian getting the go over Taysom Hill. Let's start there. Comes in relief. I think a lot of people looked at the story from last year when Drew Brees got hurt. Jameis came in relief, and then it was Taysom Hill the rest of the way. I think a lot of people were expecting something similar. How surprised are you to see Siemian get the nod, and what are your expectations for him today?
Good morning, Brendan, and good morning, Who Dat Nation. Thank you for joining us on this the finale of Falcons Hate Week Edition 1 for 2021. Listen, I'm not surprised that Siemian got the start. He is actually a very capable quarterback. Anybody that follows me knows that I followed the Denver Broncos. As a kid, I grew up, as a big fan of the Denver Elways. And Siemian actually you want to talk about a hard luck career. Siemian was the first guy to replace Peyton Manning in Denver. And now he's getting a shot at replacing Drew Brees per se. I mean, the job is Jameis Winston's, we know. But I thought Siemian did an absolutely fantastic job coming off the bench cold against the Super Bowl champion, one of the top-ranked NFL defenses. And the Saints really didn't alter their game plan at all when Trevor came into the game. Given the fact that Taysom Hill had missed the previous 3 weeks of practice, 2 games with a concussion, I expected Siemian to get the start this week. Now, at the same time, I think he'll be on a fairly short leash. If he plays well today, then Sean Payton will probably continue to roll with him. If he struggles or if the offense is extremely limited, then we'll see what we saw last year. Like you pointed out, Taysom Hill will probably take over the reins at quarterback then. But I think it's better for the offense, assuming Trevor can be efficient and run the offense productively. I think it's better for the offense with him at quarterback because it allows you to use Taysom Hill's versatile skill set in that offense. And this isn't even the same offense from last year where Michael Thomas was at least on the field for a portion of the season. You had Emmanuel Sanders. You had Latavius Murray. This is a much more limited offense. The offensive line, as you know, as we've talked about every week, the offensive line had its struggles early in the season, although they seemed to, knock on wood, solidify them. And you have Mark Ingram back. Marquez Callaway and Deontay Harris are coming along nicely, but at the very least, you have a very thin receiving core, inexperience at the tight end position. So, again, I think the offense is better off if Siemian can play well at quarterback, hold on to that job, and you can use Taysom Hill the way Sean Payton likes to use him in the way that fits Taysom's skill set most efficiently.
Well, and you had mentioned Michael Thomas there. I think it's fair, though, if anybody follows us, and all the people that do follow us over at the Saints News Network on SI.com, there's been plenty of articles written, plenty of talk this week about Michael Thomas announcing via Twitter he's going to miss the remainder of the season, just setback in the recovery process for his ankle. Was that a surprise to you, Bob? And there's been a lot of talk about the Saints going and getting a veteran receiver to help what you said is a limited receiving corps. Do you see it being a Deshaun Jackson or an OBJ?
First part of the question, it was a little bit of a surprise to me. I expected Michael Thomas to be back for possibly the Tampa Bay game. If not Tampa Bay, then certainly this week against Atlanta or next week against Tennessee. And with the news the last couple of weeks that he's been around team facilities, he's been around his teammates, which I took as a very good sign. But the fact that they did not activate him from the PUP list at all, and for those that are unfamiliar, a team when you're on the physically unable to perform list, once you're activated, you don't necessarily have to play right away. A team has 3 weeks before they could decide to activate, before they have to decide to activate you or place you on injured reserve. The fact that the Saints didn't even activate him to get him back through walkthroughs or anything like that that became more of a concern to me. So I guess when Mike finally announced that he was going to be out for the year, supposedly there was a setback in rehab. And look, if you've ever had surgery before, especially if you're an athlete, these things happen. It isn't that Michael Thomas doesn't want to play or anything like that. I don't take it as that. There seems to be a much better line of communication between Thomas and Sean Payton, it's a tough blow for the team. We were hearing reports, as you know, as you reported, that the Saints were looking to trade for a wide receiver. Whether that's true or not is irrelevant because they didn't swing a deal. I actually don't see them bringing in a guy like Deshaun Jackson, who reports have going to the Raiders early this week. Odell Beckham is a little bit different story because OBJ has a lot of close relationships on the New Orleans Saints from prior in his playing career and even reaching all the way back to college, up to and including Saints linebacker Quan Alexander. So those relationships could play a factor, but of course, Odell won't hit waivers officially until Monday. He has to clear waivers or at least get to the Saints, which I believe are 23 or 24 in the pecking order. Okay, thank you. He has to at least get to New Orleans at 23 or 24 just for an opportunity. So that means all these other teams still have a shot at Odell Beckham Jr. So I think it's slim that he ends up in New Orleans. But if the opportunity comes up there, see, a week ago or so, I'd have said, no way. I don't think he fits in the system, and I don't see Sean Payton making a move like that. Now I think it's a little bit different. I think if the opportunity were there, I do believe that OBJ could be a New Orleans Saint.
Well, and remember, any team that claims him off waivers is going to be responsible for the remainder of his salary for this year, which is somewhere around $7 million. That's a lot for a guy who is not the OBJ that we saw with the New York Giants, a guy that's hitting that back end of his career. So I could see him easily clear waivers, but coming to New Orleans, that might be a little bit of a stretch. I reported this week that it's a possibility. However, in my personal opinion, you look back in a situation where the Saints brought in a guy like Antonio Brown for a workout, and the drama just kind of followed Antonio into the workout. You have to make sure you're getting Odell Beckham Jr., not just the player, but as a person as well. Make sure that if that drama is not going to fit what's been a super strong locker room over the last half decade, it's just probably not going to work. But back into the game against Atlanta, you look at this defense, the Saints defense, second in the league in terms of points per game allowed. It's something that we haven't really seen in the Sean Payton era, but maybe once or twice. It's a little bit of a different New Orleans Saints DNA this season, but we know the Saints defense loves playing against Matt Ryan, particularly Cameron Jordan, who has sacked Matt Ryan more than any one defensive player has sacked one quarterback in NFL history. I think that's one of the most unique and one of my favorite stats I can throw out year in and year out. But this is also a Falcons team that just lost their number one wide receiver, Calvin Ridley, taking some time off to focus on his mental health. We have to applaud something like that to recognize, hey, I need to take a step back. But that is a major blow to the Atlanta Falcons from a football standpoint. Who are some weapons that you are looking at on the Atlanta Falcons that could replace some of that production from Ridley?
Well, yeah, I mean, you got to start with Kyle Pitts, the rookie tight end, 4th overall draft pick. He has quickly become a focal point of the Atlanta offense, which you don't often see out of the tight end position. But Pitts is a freak of nature, man. He's a solid inline tight end, but he's as athletic as any wide receiver, almost any wide receiver in the National Football League. So, he's not only going to beat defenses coming off the line. They can move him into the slot. They can move him in motion. I've even seen him coming out of the backfield a couple of times. And he can line up wide, like any top wide receiver. So the Saints have to find a way to contain him. As great as Demario Davis, Quan, and Pete Werner are in coverage, I don't think you're going to contain Kyle Pitts with a linebacker or even a double coverage of linebackers. Is probably going to take a cornerback when Kyle lines up into the slot or goes out wide. Maybe even a physical guy like Marshawn Lattimore you could see on Kyle Pitts a couple of times. And as much as everybody talks about Pitts, and rightfully so, remember that Atlanta has Hayden Hurst at tight end too. Their number 2 tight end is a former number 1 draft choice in his own right. He was one of the Falcons' leading receivers last year, and is certainly still capable of beating a defense. So with those tandem of tight ends, it's going to be very tough for any defense to contain. At wideout, after they traded, Julio Jones, which I was surprised in and of itself, and the fact that Calvin Ridley and prayers be with you, young man. I hope you get whatever you need to straightened out and get back to a solid mental health soon. But without those 2 guys, they brought in Tajay Sharp this offseason, and they already had Russell Gage. Those are 2 very capable, very underrated receivers. I mean, that's a big drop off from Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. But these guys can still put up numbers. And they also have Christian Blake, who Saints fans are a little bit familiar with. Blake has made a couple of nice catches against New Orleans over the last few seasons. They have a couple other deep threats. Matt Ryan can and will spread the ball around on you. Other than Pitts, he doesn't have any bona fide top wideout to target. But the Falcons still have a deep set of targets.
Well, and they still have a guy named Cordero Patterson who's had a little bit of a resurgence in his career. He's playing running back. He's playing receiver. It might be a stretch to say, but for the lack of a better comparison, you could say he's the Taysom Hill of their team, just able to line up kind of everywhere. What do you like about Cordero Patterson? What has he done to kind of have this resurgence in his career? Because a lot of people remember him as a return man, one of the better ones in the league, that would come out and catch a few passes, but what was never a number 1 or number 2 target for a team. He's now doing a little bit of everything in Atlanta.
Yeah, and I think I think the reason why he has had so much success is Atlanta's finally using him right. Other teams, as you said, if Deontay Harris isn't the best return man in the NFL, then Cordero Patterson is. I mean, he's right at the top of the list. But the teams that Patterson has been with through his career, which I know the Vikings and the Raiders come to mind for sure, they tried to use him as a traditional wide receiver. That doesn't fit into Patterson's skill set. I mean, he is Atlanta's leading rusher in terms of yardage, not carries. He's right up there. He's second behind Pitts in receptions and receiving yards. But the Falcons don't line him up in any one place. They actually use him. You made the comparison to Taysom Hill. I think the way they use him and line him up is more in line with what the Saints do with Alvin Kamara. We'll see Patterson coming out of the backfield. We'll see him lined up in the slot, in motion, and certainly even out wide. And that's why he's been so successful. As the Falcons look to scheme a matchup to get him in open space, and once that's successful, he's a game breaker. I mean, he's a scoring threat from anywhere onto the field.
Matt Ryan has faced this New Orleans Saints team so many times in his NFL career, and it seems like the rumors year in and year out indicate that this could be towards the end of Matt Ryan's tenure in Atlanta. Do you think Matt Ryan still has a little bit of gas in the tank, not only for this season, next season, and moving forward? And if you're the Falcons, what's the plan moving forward at quarterback? I know it's a little bit of off question from the game itself, but this is a guy that Saints fans are extremely familiar with, and in my opinion, could find himself on a few ballots for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I think Matt Ryan will end up in Canton someday. He's not a first ballot Hall of Fame guy, but he's certainly in the conversation to eventually get there. And I do think that Ryan still has the physical tools, to beat a defense and lead a team at least into the playoffs. Pass protection is of utmost importance, and Atlanta's never been able to protect him very well. But in recent years, it's gotten a lot worse. And this year is once again bad. And that's going to make any quarterback look bad, especially when you're an immobile guy like Ryan. And what is he, 36, going on 37 years old? He's been beaten up severely, especially over the last couple of years. So I do see the Falcons. I mean, you look throughout that Atlanta roster, and there's a lot of young talent there. They're rebuilding their defense. We talked about Ridley, Kyle Pitts. They're both extremely young players. So I can see Atlanta moving on from Ryan at quarterback this offseason, if they have some sort of plan within that organization, which has floundered in recent years. But make no mistake, I think Matt Ryan is a guy that could land on another team, and if in the right situation, you might see. And Stafford's a younger guy, younger than Matt Ryan, but you might see sort of a rebirth to Matt Ryan's career if he lands in the right situation. But I do believe this is his last year in Atlanta.
When you talked about that weak offensive line, some news that we will be monitoring throughout the day. This could be a first that we see Marcus Davenport and Peyton Turner active for the same game, which would eliminate some rumors that maybe they're the same person after all. But the Saints will be without Carl Granderson. We mentioned Cameron Jordan, big boost getting David Onyemata back last week. Could you see the Saints pass rush have a little bit of a resurgence in their season? Last week was definitely a step up from a team that just could not get to the quarterback. Could you see the Saints take another step? And I'll make the joke, could they level up here on the defensive side of the football in terms of getting to the quarterback, especially against a weak offensive line today?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And I think the Saints pass rush and front seven in general is a key to this game, because we've seen already that you cannot give Matt Ryan any time at all to pass. Otherwise, again, he will rip your defense apart no matter how good your coverage is. And you not only look at the pressure that the Saints generated against Tampa Bay, but even Seattle the week before. I think they have 10 quarterback sacks, eight or 10 quarterback sacks in the last 2 games combined. And that pressure up front has been a key, to their defensive performance against both Seattle and Tampa Bay. You mentioned Cam Jordan. We know about Marcus Davenport. We saw what kind of massive effect that David Onyemata had. Not enough people are talking about the free agent acquisition of Tanoa Kpassagnon this offseason. He actually leads the team in sacks, and he's every bit a disruptive presence as Cam, Davenport, Onyemata, and Peyton Turner. We've seen flashes from him too. So yeah, I absolutely believe that this Saints pass rush and defensive line could be the key to a lengthy playoff run, and is definitely the key to a strong defensive performance today.
Well, on the defensive side of the ball, once again, Peyton Turner questionable coming in to today. Malcolm Jenkins also questionable. That could ruin an Ironman streak. He's got one of the longest, I think maybe the longest streak actively in the NFL, and they will be without Carl Granderson today. Let's flip it to the offensive side of the football for New Orleans. We talked about Trevor Siemian. You said you're not surprised to see him get the start. He may be on a short leash, and if today doesn't go extremely well, we could see Taysom Hill next week. But Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram back together. We got to see that last week. Great crowd in New Orleans inside the Superdome. And really, you could make the argument that was one of the first, if you have the Giants game, obviously, but that might have been the loudest that place has been in I think they said it was January 2019 was the last sellout before the Giants game because of COVID. So that was definitely the first real big Superdome crowd, noise, feel, what have you, that the Saints have had in a long time. And I know having Mark Ingram back had a lot to do with that. Ingram is 60-some-odd yards away from Deuce McAllister's record as the all-time leading rusher for the New Orleans Saints. We talked about it a little bit last week, but I want to go back to it. What difference does it have for New Orleans moving forward and down this stretch, having Mark Ingram back?
Oh, man, it's huge. And you're right. We did talk about it last week. We know about Ingram's skill set. I mean, he is but he's also one of the most popular players in New Orleans Saints history, particularly with this generation. And we saw the kind of emotional boost, pure electricity that he brings to that entire franchise. We saw it on the field last week. But I mean, his skill set cannot be dismissed either. We know, we've used the term angry Ingram. When he just has that motivational charge to him, where he carries tacklers, and he's a very bruising and physical runner between the tackles. People don't realize how underrated a receiver he is out of the backfield also. And probably not enough people talk about that because you have Alvin Kamara, one of the best receiving backs to ever play, and certainly the top option in today's game. But Ingram worked hard to improve his abilities as a receiver. He runs the screen pass as well as anybody. He's a very effective check down option. And with him and Kamara as a 1-2 punch, That's what's going to carry along with the offensive line, of course. That's what's going to carry this offense for the rest of the season. I cannot. I got a little miffed at people this past week. The Saints didn't make any moves at the trade deadline, and blah blah blah. Look, they brought back Mark Ingram, and a couple weeks before that, they traded for Bradley Roby to add secondary depth. So this team did make moves. And what Mark Ingram is going to mean to this offense the rest of the year, especially now with essentially a third-string quarterback that's got to lead your team. Ingram and Kamara, this team is going to go as far as those two carry them.
Well, and also a note, this is the first time, obviously, since Ingram's first game back in New Orleans was last week, that you'll have Taysom Hill, Mark Ingram, and Alvin Kamara this season. And that trio is going to open up opportunities to line Kamara up in the slot, move him around, move Taysom around. It gives a lot of flexibility to this offense that needs that flexibility considering how limited they are. Siemian, going back to him, a little bit of a game manager that you saw last week, and that's what we kind of expect. Nothing too crazy from Siemian. We certainly don't expect him to throw 40, 50 passes in the game. But we talked so much about that limited receiving corps and limited and young weapons at the tight end position. We know so well that Sean Payton likes to script those first 15 plays. What do you expect in that script, those first 15 plays, to get Siemian comfortable?
I think we're going to see a lot of passes to the running backs today. Kamara and Ingram, and I believe that they are the key to the game plan against the Falcons. But you also, like you said, you want to get your quarterback into a rhythm. And just like Sean did last week with Jameis Winston, as hyped up as he was to go against his former team in Tampa Bay, he wants to get Trevor Siemian, who's making his first start since 2019, into a quick rhythm today. Siemian and Marquez Callaway, seems to have a pretty good rapport from what I saw last week. There was some back shoulder throws and some throws made in key third and fourth down situations from Siemian to Callaway that you really only see a quarterback make if they're comfortable with the receiver that they're throwing to. So I think we're going to see those kind of routes, some quick timing routes between Siemian and Callaway, or Siemian and Deontay Harris even, just to kind of boost the quarterback's confidence a little bit. Trevor doesn't have the arm that Jameis Winston does, but he does have good enough arm strength to hit those outside throws. So you want to do that to kind of test the Falcons, from sideline to sideline before you take a deep shot and test their vertical defense, because the Falcons work very hard at not getting beat over the top. So they'll give a quarterback a lot of throws underneath. I mean, Atlanta's given up, a 69% completion percentage to opposing quarterbacks. So that tells you, that they play a lot of off and loose and zone coverages. That's a very easy defense for a quarterback to kind of get into a rhythm against.
For Saints fans that don't know or don't follow the Falcons or the NFC South that closely, who are some players on the defensive side of the ball for the Falcons that could disrupt the game plan for New Orleans today? Who's a defensive player to watch for Atlanta?
If you follow the Falcons, then you already know that their best pass rusher, Dante Fowler, is not available. He's on injured reserve. But there's a guy on the defensive line. He plays defensive end in a 3-4 alignment, but he has the body of a defensive tackle. Grady Jarrett has the capabilities to wreck an opposing offense. And he is going to test New Orleans coverage, blocking up front, excuse me. So you have to account for Jarrett. He's a guy that you need to double team. But Stephen Means as an edge rusher, Marlon Davidson as an interior rusher, they're kind of starting to come into their own a little bit. If those guys can't get to the passer, then Atlanta has two of the better more athletic inside linebackers than you will see throughout the league. Very similar style of play to Levante David and Devin White that we saw at Tampa Bay last week. Atlanta has Deion Jones, out of LSU for you Tigers fans, and I always mispronounce his name. Foysad Aloquan. Both of those guys are capable of making plays sideline to sideline, and the Falcons won't hesitate to blitz them to bring some disruption onto opposing backfields. Especially if their defensive line and edge rushers cannot get there. So you look for these guys to make plays all over the field, and they are capable of staying with Kamara and coverage. We've seen Alvin struggle a little bit against Atlanta as a pass receiver for that very reason. Kamara has had much more success as a rusher against Atlanta, but as a receiver, he's been held fairly well in check.
Well, Bob, you're in New Orleans right now. You got to go out around the town a little bit last night. What is the energy and the vibes in Atlanta, or rather in New Orleans, as Atlanta comes to town to renew one of the biggest rivalries in football?
There's a lot of excitement through the city, as there always is. And I've been in town for a couple of these Falcons games before. But the city itself, and just in the area that I've been around, and my wife Lauren and I have been around. It seems to be a very upbeat attitude about the team in general. And you do see, as you always will in New Orleans, it's a destination for visiting teams, fans to travel to and enjoy themselves. And you do see a lot of Falcons gear throughout the city. And there's been a lot of good-natured yelling back and forth on the street. But the mood in general has been pretty charged up, and I expect the Saints need to come out with an intense effort right out of the game. But I think that if they're able to do that, the momentum of what they built on from last week's victory against Tampa Bay is sure to boost them this afternoon.
Well, with a victory, the New Orleans Saints would jump to 6-2 and also take possession of first place in the NFC South, as they have the tiebreaker with the win over the Buccaneers last week. Bob, before we let you go, you said that the key to victory in terms of the offensive side of the ball is going to be Kamara and Ingram. What is the key to victory on the defensive side of the ball today?
You got to pressure Matt Ryan and completely shut down what's been an underwhelming Atlanta running game. When Atlanta came into New Orleans 2 years ago, in a very similar situation, the Saints had a terrific record. The Falcons did not. Atlanta just beat up New Orleans in 2019 on both sides of the ball. They really physically took it to Sean Payton's crew. If Atlanta is able to do that again, it's going to be a long afternoon. But I think Sean Payton and the coaching staff are reminding these players, many of whom were on that 2019 team. They're reminding these players of exactly what happened. So if the Saints can shut down an underwhelming Atlanta running game, they've made the Falcons one-dimensional, and that dimension no longer has Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and with an older, more beat-up Matt Ryan. So that's the key to the game, is dominating the Falcons in the trenches, obviously on both sides of the ball, but you especially have to do it defensively. Because if you can do that, you obviously, as I said, shut down the Atlanta's running game. But by default, you're going to get pressure on Matt Ryan too. If that happens, Matt Ryan is no Tom Brady. He will throw the ball to the other team. And we've seen the Saints disrupt Brady and force Brady into turnovers. The last 3 or 4 meetings against Matt Ryan, that same kind of thing has happened. So you have to win the turnover battle, especially when you have a shorthanded offense like New Orleans. And pressure. I look for them to pressure Matt Ryan heavily, even blitzing DeMario and Quan Alexander. You want to beat up Matty Ice, throw him to the ground, and I guarantee you if that happens, he will throw the ball to your defensive backs a couple of times.
All right, Bob, where can everybody follow you on the World Wide Web, and what is your final score prediction for today?
First of all, again, thank you for joining us, Who Dat Nation. I probably won't be checking in with you at halftime, but if you are at the game today, either shoot me a direct message on Twitter at BobbyR2613, or shoot me a Facebook message, on Messenger. I'm Bob Rose on Facebook. Let me know where you're at. I'd love to meet some of you, this afternoon, or perhaps even after the game. I will be there with my wife down in section 267. So pretty close to field level. As far as my prediction for the game, you always worry when you have a third string, when you have a backup quarterback of any kind. But I have confidence that Simeon will be able to lead this offense. And this defense just took it up another notch or two when Jameis Winston went down last week. They know that their chances for wins most weeks and chances for a playoff berth lies on the shoulders of those defenders, and they don't take that responsibility lightly at all. I like New Orleans to win this one going away, but I'm going to go with them 27-13.
All right. And for myself, you can follow me over at BT Boylan on Twitter and Instagram. Follow all of our work with the Saints News Network at si.com/NFL/Saints. I'm not in New Orleans. You can't catch up with me, but if you are there, make sure you catch up with Bob Rose. My final score prediction, Bob, it's going to be somewhere in a similar ballpark. I'm going to take the Saints 28-10 in what should be a pretty dominating home victory. And I like throwing these out there every week. My bold prediction, we said he's 60 yards away. Might as well do it at home. Mark Ingram breaks off a long run and ends up breaking Deuce's record at home in front of the Who Dat Nation today. Well, guys, Bob won't be with us for halftime. So, Bob, we will see you next week. I will see you guys right here at halftime. Make sure you come and join us. Have a great rest of your morning. Enjoy the conclusion of Falcons Hate Week 1 or Volume 1 of the 2021 season. Bob, you have a great time, and we'll see you soon.